Awesome. All right, guys, welcome back to the Func Med Nation podcast. I have the pleasure today of talking to Dr. Melissa Longo, who is situated way up north in Collingwood, Ontario. Is that right, Collingwood?
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you took time out to talk to me. I know you and I have known each other for a couple of years now, and I had the pleasure of writing a testimonial for you for some of the new work that you're doing. I actually copied and pasted because I figured like it might be pretty cool to read that today. But, I thought that I wanted to talk to you for a couple of different reasons, because you're doing something different than a lot of other industry leaders are. Mm-hmm. And like a lot of the other industry leaders that I've talked to interviewing for the podcast, everyone's kind of got like their origin story.
Yeah.
Right. And it's almost like this is a very recurrent theme that I've experienced myself, is that you come to some realization that things aren't what you wanted them to be, and you're forced with making a choice. You either just kind of continue on as is and suffer the consequences for that, or you take the bull by the horns and you do the hard work of literally reinventing yourself. And so I want you to start with and maybe you can kind of pepper a little bit about your background and all that stuff for people who don't know who you are.
Sure.
But what I want to get to is I want to get to that aha moment that you had where you were in a busy chiropractic practice. You were overseeing multiple doctors, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And then you had this like epiphany, like, this is not what I want. Mm-hmm. So just kind of, walk me through that, because it's not an uncommon problem. And
not at all.
No. And let me just say this one thing, and I'll toss it over to you. In all of my travels and teaching functional medicine in the last 15 years, it's amazing how many conversations I've had with people who are in what most other people will call successful practices, and they weren't happy, and they were stressed, and they were overextended, and it was just like literally draining their souls, and they were looking for a way out and they couldn't find it. They didn't know what to do. And that's not my deal. I don't help people in that way. So, but I know that's part of your shtick because you went through that yourself. So I'm going to stop talking. Melissa Longo, wax poetic for us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm always happy to connect and talk all things being a health healthpreneur. So my story, I definitely had a pivotal moment. I've been in practice now for 20 years as a chiropractor, clinical chiropractor. I have been coaching other healthcare professionals for the last 6 years. But my pivotal moment was probably 12 years ago when my sons at that point were, 10 and 8 or 10 and 6 or something like that. And I was single mom. So I'd gone through divorce. So my first practice as a chiropractor, you're correct, was a bigger office. My ex-husband was a chiropractor. We had a big place together. We had other therapists there. We were doing the thing, like you're supposed to build a high volume practice and you're going to do all these things like people told us in school. And for him, he was making him happy. But I got to a point where I'm like, this is not feeling right for me. And then when our marriage ended and our business changed, I started all over again, to create a new practice. And I was still in that mode of like, I'm going to be successful when I have a high volume practice. And, when I wasn't in practice, I was with my 2 little kids, single parent. And I got to points where I just remember feeling like overwhelmed, stressed because I was rebuilding, so stressed for money, struggling emotionally, physically to make everything work. And also feeling myself at times saying things, because coaches at the time had told me to say things. And I'm just like, people can't see what I'm doing right now, but I'm just like wanting to shrug it off because I'm like, this is not me. This doesn't feel like me. And I think it was a process of just realizing over a couple of months, like this is not working for me. And so I got out of that practice situation, bought another building so that I could create a live and work space for my sons. Again, at that time they were younger. And I created a whole different business model for myself. And in the process, when I stripped away the things that were not working for me, and what I mean by that is that the things that I didn't want to do. So some docs, they love managing people. Some docs love having, running the clinical director side of things. They love lots of things. I realized for me, and this will be important for your listeners, is like really connecting with what you want and not letting it be defined by someone else. When I realized that what I love to do was clinical care, teach people about health and healing, and then be a mom, and then be Melissa. And I stripped away all the roles that I was playing that didn't fit that. everything got better. I mean, my income went up because I stripped away things that I was doing that, even the location changed. But my level of joy went up because I was able to focus on the things that I love to do. I had a television show then. I was doing events in the community. I started doing podcasts and then coaching and really doing the things that give me joy and that I know that I'm supposed to be doing because I feel good doing them and I get, the results are there. So it was definitely a moment. Fast forward now, I would do it all over again to go through that process of discovery, of self-discovery. And just to touch on quickly what you said at the beginning, when you travels and what you're observing, I have the same conversations consistently. When I was doing my podcast, Rockstar Doctor Life, over 180 episodes, I had some very interesting conversations before and after the recording. So I was talking to docs who were in massive practices, who then would see my setup and would say to me, and these are people that I even looked up to, God, I wish I could do what you're doing. That looks really great. Right?
I hear that all the time. And, I told this, it's a very short story, but I told this yesterday. I did interview with this guy, James Maskell, that I was telling you about just before we started recording. And I was teaching a functional medicine seminar in Manhattan. And we were on a break and this young couple came up to me and said, "Hey, can we talk to you privately?" And I'm like, this first thing is like, okay, what's going on? And so they were probably in their early to mid 30s, had been in practice for probably 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. He was the clinician, she ran the office. And they described to me that how they had built this very successful gargantuan practice that was absolutely killing them. They didn't know how to get out. And so they kept asking me, like, what are you doing? Because throughout the course of the seminar, I guess it had come up that at that time, my practice was about half brick and mortar hands-on and the other half was virtual. And so they were, as we were talking and I was explaining, like, I have no staff, my overhead is X, which is like almost nothing. And you could see the tears were welling up in their eyes because of the stress that they were under. And that's not to say that big gargantuan practices aren't someone's idea of success. And maybe that's a good conversation to have. Like, what is success? Because you're right, as chiropractors, and I'm sure it's probably true of all health disciplines, right? Depending no matter what your credentials, your licensure is. When you graduate, there's a certain expectation that you're going to follow a path that others have set out before you. And very well, you can put 10 chiropractors in a room together. And very quickly, the conversation becomes about who's got the biggest clinic, sees the most people, bills and collects the most money. And it becomes a big, what measuring contest. And I never fit into that personally. And I think part of the reason for me, and I'd like your insight on this, I'm an introvert. And I misunderstood what an introvert was up until several years ago. And I can't remember where I got clarity on this, but I can be the guy for a weekend. I can go teach a 3-day seminar and engage with 30, 40, 60, 80 docs over a period of 3 days and be on constantly. But when I'm done, I'm completely wiped out. As opposed to an extrovert who would be like Sunday night, they were like, okay, let's go out to dinner and party. I'm like, no, I got to go home and I got to put my feet up and I got to just chill out because that kind of output completely drains me. And so I never was comfortable with a high volume chiropractic model. It exhausted me. And I had 5 young kids when I was in practice. So talk to me, number one, about like, what is success? Right. And then talk to me about this pressure that we all share across all disciplines to conform to a certain idea of what success really looks like.
Well, I'm not really good at conformity, so I can't really address that one. I'm rebellious by nature, according to lots of people's opinions, but also knowing myself. And we can talk about that a little bit more. But honestly, I think what that speaks to is just knowing yourself. And you knowing yourself as an introvert. Well, plenty of introverted personalities are very overwhelmed with practice because it's the output of energy. It's not just the physical or chiropractic. It's not just the adjustment. It's actually the conversation. It's the emotional output that we give to people. And I feel it too. When I've done big events, I plan time afterwards and time leading up to it to be grounded and stay, calm for myself, because I know that I get over, and I wouldn't say that I'm introverted, but I need to restore. And so I hear you, what you're saying, but it's great that you knew yourself and were able to create a practice that worked for you and had the confidence and courage to do that, which is, I think, what would answer your second question there. We'll go back to the success piece is, how do we buck the trend of like, what does success mean? Well, it is having the confidence and the courage to go your own way. And what helps with that is finding the right people to support you along the way, a lot of clarity around who you are. And which also is like, how do you define success? My definition of success is living according to my values,
right, and
making a difference in people's lives. Right. And for me, helping people thrive in their health and life and business is what I do in all parts of my day. And my values are very clear for me. And so when I can make those decisions with who I'm spending time with in my personal life, who I'm inviting into my coaching practice, it filters everything and it makes life a lot easier. So that's me, but I think everyone needs to define their own success, right? I do like pretty things. Don't get me wrong. I do like, I have certain standards of how I want to live. And I know that there's a certain level of income that has to support that, but there's lots of things that don't matter to me. And so I even have this conversation with my sons. I'm like, you need to figure out what kind of lifestyle you want. And if you want to, how you're going to support that lifestyle. If you have a really simple lifestyle, then you don't need to make as much money as someone who has a more lavish dream for themselves. So I think it comes back down to clarity, self-awareness. I encourage my clients to define their level of success in different categories. So your relationship success, your health, your business, like your finances, but your impact, right? Your connections, like how are all those things working for you? Because as you know, you just shared that story. There's plenty of people that have these massive practices that they don't like. They have so much stress that goes along with it, or they have no time for their health. They've got, and I hear about them because they're my clients, like things that they're struggling with. And so to me, financial wealth is not the only metric for success. I do think it has to be a very personal conversation and one that should be given ample credit, ample time to discover.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I remember this is back when we actually had cable television. We haven't had cable TV since our kids were young, and they're all grown and having babies now. And I do remember a commercial that was kind of like a suburban area. It was a nice house, a couple of cars in the parking lot or in the driveway. And this guy was on a riding mower, mowing his lawn with this big pasted on smile on his face. And the whole commercial was about being in over your head financially. And the guy was like, the final line was, he was driving across his lawn and he looks at the camera and goes, "Somebody help me." And, it doesn't matter. It no longer impresses me to hear somebody say, "I've got this big, massive practice and blah, blah, blah." Because I've been involved in practices like that. In fact, when I moved to Florida, I joined a practice and we grew into I would say a mid-sized multidisciplinary practice where we had 8 different practitioners of different types. We had 30 odd staff. We were billing and collecting an awful lot of money, but the stress and the amount of money that was left over at the end of the month, you really have to kind of wonder whether or not that was worth it. And when I started to shift and change my priorities and connect with, to me, what it meant to be successful. And it's so much more than just your production as a chiropractor, a medical doctor, a naturopath, or whatever. I started to realize, especially traveling the country and talking to people, is that with a low stress, low profile practice like mine, I had as much or more money left over at the end of the month as some of these guys that were doing $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 a month in revenue.
Yeah, and absolutely, because their expenses are higher.
Right. And so to me, I kind of grappled with that, but let's go back to this idea about the pressure to conform. I know you're a nonconformist, but
that doesn't mean I haven't felt it. I mean, look, I just told you at the beginning, like my first part of my career was how I dressed, the things I was saying. Like I was told, like, you're going to be happy. This is what's going to define you as a successful chiropractor. Yeah. And I really had to spend some time unwinding some of that programming that I had been given. Yeah. And so this desire to conform, I think we're wired. We all can say that we don't care what other people think, or we have to care about, but that's not true. Scientifically, biologically, it's not even true. We do care what people think about us, but the difference should be you caring about the right people, right? You can't care what some stranger thinks about you. what my partner, my kids, my family, like my best friends, like, of course I care about their opinion because they know me, like me, trust me. There's a different relationship there. So being able to filter, yourself and what matters to you in amongst all those other relationships can be really challenging for people. Right. And I want to make comment, like, there's lots of people that don't have that kind of supportive environment around them. And so I'm sensitive to that. If people are hearing this and saying, well, I've got, this situation. However, that saying, like, you are like the people that you spend the most time with. And if there's toxic relationships around you, it's time to investigate them, whether they are in the form of a spouse, of a family member, of people that it will be harder to untangle yourself from. Those relationships matter, and they can have a profound impact on people's ability to go their own way and to follow their own definition of success. The unfortunate part for some is they will hit a crisis. There have been lots of healthcare professionals that know better. They know how to be healthy, and yet they're forgetting to take care of themselves until, the body says no. The body gives them some kind of crisis. They get a cancer diagnosis. They have a breakdown, mental. They feel depressed. Like, we get these wake up calls, and it's a matter of, whether we listen to them or not. Yeah. So hopefully I answered that question on some way there.
You did, but it's in my mind, it's raised a whole bunch of other ideas and questions that we could explore. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, you had an epiphany. You and I share one similarity in our stories, in the sense that we were faced with a circumstance where we had to make a change. Mm-hmm. And, both you and I could have duplicated what we were doing, just do it with different people in a different place. Or you could take the time to reflect and go, okay, now I can craft things the way that I want to. And I would imagine that there's two very broad general categories of practitioners. One is someone stuck in a situation that's not feeding their soul, if I can use that phrase, and they don't necessarily understand that part of their struggle is the fact that they're trapped in a motive practice or a business model or something else that doesn't match what they really want. And maybe they haven't really spent much time. And then there's probably the other person who understands that, okay, this is not what I want. I just don't know what I want. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, as a coach, and I know that you coach more than just chiropractors, right? You coach a whole bunch of different. Yeah,
I started with just chiropractors, but now it's expanded to people in the health and wellness world.
Right, so, in the broader continuum. So is that phenomena unique to chiropractors, or that's just healthcare, right?
No, I don't even think it's healthcare. I think it's the whole population, to be honest, because I have these conversations in my practice. I've started running events in my community on for women on business and branding and beauty and style. And I take them through my whole clarity process, the first part of the day. And a lot of these women have never asked themselves that. And these aren't, the last event I did, one was a chiropractor. All the rest were, one was a teacher, interior designer, a photographer. No, a lot of people sometimes just start life and they don't really ask themselves, what do you want? But it's not just what you want. Like, when you're building a career, you have to be asking yourself that question all the time. Yeah. Like, checkpoints with yourself, like every year people set these resolutions, or like, well, how are you evolving? Like, what you said you wanted last year, is that still what you want this year? Yeah. Your kids are getting older. I'm sure you went through this as your kids, and you have grandkids now. So when you went through these milestones of having young kids to then teenagers to then out of the door, like, who we are as practitioners even evolves because our time shifts. So if you're not always checking in with yourself about who you are, what you want, and then I know you want to talk about branding at some point, and then not even like messaging yourself effectively, there's a disconnect that will happen, and it's not great business, but it's more importantly, it's not great for the doctor. But something that I think just came to me when you said what you said previously, this was like, well, I got to a point where one of my coaches said to me, and I was early on after I went through divorce and was rebuilding my practice, he said, no one's coming for you. And it was a bit aggressive at the time, but I remember it hit me. And this conversation came up in a podcast interview I just did the other day. The woman said that. She goes, someone said to me, no one's coming for you. Because when I think about what it took for me to leave a marriage that wasn't working for me, start a new business, start a podcast, start a TV show, like all these things that took some courage, it wasn't anyone else but me that did the work, right? So there's a part of me that I was able to believe in myself because of my nurturing, my people around me. I was able to keep going when things got difficult. And so that piece, I think it's important to understand. Like I said earlier, it's your tribe and people around you that's important, but no one's going to do this work for you. No one's going to hold your hand while you start a podcast. You can have a coach help you, but no one's actually going to be there and do the work.
Right.
And funny thing is, last night I was with my girlfriends and we got talking about this same kind of conversation, and we were all laughing about this Snoop Dogg video. And I don't know if you've seen it, but it's quite funny because at one point in the speech, he says, "I want to thank myself." He's like, "I want to thank myself for never quitting, for working more hours than I should have, for always believing in myself." And he goes through this whole thing. I think he was giving a speech for, I don't know, graduate. Look it up because it's really funny. But that's the truth of it, is if you're hearing this today, like, what are you doing for yourself? And are you believing in yourself? Because no one else can give you that. It has to come from you.
You know, it strikes me that that's not unlike, the aspects of clinical practice where, especially in functional medicine, I think it's different with hands-on modalities like chiropractic, because patients can't adjust themselves biomechanically correctly. I mean, they could crack their neck, for example. But in the kind of work that I do on people who would be listening to the podcast in functional medicine, we all know that we don't fix people. They fix themselves. We're just there to guide them through the journey, identify their obstacles, and help devise strategies that they execute to fix that. So it seems to be kind of this universal phenomenon. And I hear what you're saying, that this whole thing about feeling trapped and not having clarity, not having a vision or knowing how to execute it, it goes way beyond just the profession of healthcare. How much do you think would change if the thought process that you're espousing now and what you've built into your coaching programs, how much would change? Let's just keep it in healthcare. How much would change if medical students, chiropractic students, naturopathic students, oriental medicine students, nutritionists, dietitians were taught this in school and they came out into the professional environment already knowing this stuff? Because it's it can be quite painful to have to figure it out, right? Necessity is the mother of invention or reinvention. Sometimes you got to go through some pretty heavy, costly things to get to the point where you're like, okay, I got to figure this shit out. Forgive my language.
Yeah, I think it would be, it would be a game changer for some people. I'm absolutely in agreement with you. Sometimes you don't know what you actually want in practice. Like you and I had the experience until you realize what you don't want.
Right.
And so going through that experience, sure, there was times that it was costly and financially whatnot, but I would still do it again because the clarity I have from going through it, I would never have gained from a coach telling me their experience or reading a textbook or an online course or something. So you have to go through some things to know it. But I would have loved 20 years ago to have been shown the different options. 20 years ago, it was not seen, and as being an associate was like, you're not the top doc yet, right? You're going to work your way up to become the one that owns like the gold standard for most people was still like have your own practice. And for many people, being an associate is amazing for them at different stages of their life or forever, because they want to go in and adjust. They don't want to manage a business, especially for women, right? They want to go in and have babies and take time off and have other docs to rely on. And it's a beautiful arrangement for both practitioner and the associate, right? So the stigma around that for the longest time, I know isn't there anymore. But I think there's still some personal guilt that docs carry. Should they merge with another office? Should they? And when I give them permission to say, hey, well, what do you actually want? Like, what are your best skills? If you don't want to manage people, then you should actually just go be an associate or an independent contract somewhere.
That's me.
Yeah. So I think it's, again, it all goes back to clarity, but I think it would be amazing if students of all disciplines were given this exposure of just find some clarity on who you are and what you want.
Right.
And start building a life that you can from the beginning, rather than it's a lot more to untangle. Even that story you told at the beginning, those docs that have this massive practice, if they wanted to walk away from it and start something smaller or do something totally different clinically, there's a lot to untangle from. It's not impossible. Everything is possible, but there's a lot more pieces to look after. So whereas if you start, with the right intention, then it's a lot easier.
I think it's difficult to let go of things that you've built or you're heavily entrenched in, especially if you serve in key roles in an organization. I was in a group practice in Florida before I stepped out and went solo. It was not just the the main income earner in the chiropractic department. I was clinical director. I was the number 2 guy in the clinic next to the owner. And it because of how I'm wired, it hurt me to make the decision to step away.
Right.
Because
yeah,
part of it is the identity, and the other part of it is the sense of responsibility for all the people that rely on the things that I was doing and performing within that practice. Now they ended up surviving just fine at the time for a while. But I had to disentangle myself, not to the point where you shut off your feelings, but to realize, okay, there's way more people out there that are as good or better than I am at doing these things. It's their job to find those people and plug them in. And when I came to that realization, it freed me up to start asking questions like, what kind of practice do I want? And maybe we'll get to that part of the story. But again, this is about you and your story. It's not about me. So let me circle back to the definition of success. And then I want to move on to talking about your simple practice concept and coaching program. So let's go back, and I want to kind of nail you down on this with, like, what is success? And is it well, just if you were, I guess I'm thinking in general terms. I mean, I think I understand your priorities and your values, and maybe the simplest definition of success is what you think success is.
Yeah, but again, I don't think my definition is your definition or anyone else.
And that's my point. Not what you think it is, but the anonymous you that's out there. Like, what do you want?
Yeah. It's bringing up that there's a really beautiful quote. It's a long quote. I think it's by Walt Whitman, and sometimes it's in my office here, but it's this whole simple thing. Like, the definition of success is, waking up to your child's breath in the morning, and simple, like, it's all really like hearing laughter throughout your day. And it's just really beautiful. And it's been on my wall multiple times in homes I've had. But for me, the definition of success is making a difference in people's lives without sacrificing my own personal or physical needs. Right. And are the people who matter to me. Yeah. So I define my success in how I show up as a mother, how I show up in all of my relationships, but my kids my 2 sons are the most important people to me in this world. And perhaps my role in my success is going to be to just help nurture them to do great things. Right. And not so much about my own ego and my own goals and my own needs. But for me, success is very much lifestyle based. I guard my lifestyle very, very carefully now. It's how I structure, programs I'm launching, when I teach, when I coach, when I travel, when I take time off, how much I take on. It's a filter for me. So success for me is probably, to give you a succinct definition, for me, it's living the lifestyle that I want at any given time. So so your business and your practice then become tools and vehicles to accomplish that, right? Absolutely. I mean, the tagline for the Simple Practice program is adjust your business to create the lifestyle that you want. Yeah. So, all right. So why did you call it your Simple Practice? That's the name of the program, right? Your Simple Practice. So why, I mean, you could have named it anything. You could have named it your amazingly successful practice, but why did you use the word simple? Because of the conversations I was having with people on the podcast, because of stress, because of the things that we talked about earlier. Like, what I see with a lot of doctors is that they have these big, complicated definitions of success in life, and then they create a business that's really complicated. Even how they market is complicated, and it does not need to be so freaking complicated. So I like simplicity. I like ease. I like flow. And simple does not mean small. It does not mean that there's never stress. It just means that, your simple practice, the core of it is creating a practice that's right for you. And I've had docs in that program who have big practices and want to simplify their communications. And, I've had docs in that program who want to simplify their marketing, or they want to learn how to delegate things better. So it's just, no one wants complicated. So I don't think anyone really wants complicated. And I think even now more than ever, after the last couple of years that we've had, like, I think people are craving, there was a lot of stress and trauma that happened in the last couple of years, but there was a lot of gifts that emerged out of that too. You talked earlier about the identity shifts that a lot of docs had to go through when they couldn't practice because they were forced to close their offices. I was fortunate that I was already coaching at that time, so I was still busy. I had something to do every day, even though my clinical practice was closed. But it's the idea of creating more ease in your life. You know, a lot of docs went through the process of realizing their kids were home more. They want to spend more time with their kids. So how do I shift my practice hours or my location so that I can actually be the kind of parent I want? I think a lot of people had some of that, you know, those aha moments in the last couple of years. So the focus on simplicity is just streamlining and simplifying things. And so that it gets to the core of who you are, not necessarily so that it can be small, it can be big, it can be anything that you want.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of people do what I've done in the past. And this is kind of, you mindlessly walk through life, going through the motions, particularly if you're involved in some kind of an industry or profession that really kind of has this normalized definition of what success looks like. You just kind of automatically buy into that unless you have a strong streak of bucking the system, kind of like your nature, for example. And it seems to me one of the things that you're saying is that success, number one, is personal. It's your definition of a success. That's where you're going to find most of your fulfillment. It also seems to me that you're saying that success is malleable in the sense that it might be relevant to consider what success means at different stages of life, where your roles might change and your responsibilities might change. And it also seems to me that you're saying that quite often what has to happen for someone to realize that they need to change things is a realignment of their values and their priorities. And it seems to me that it would be far better to actively or proactively engage in that process rather than waiting for something to happen that forces your back against the wall. Now, that can be great because it can unlock a lot of creativity. But like I said a moment ago, it can often come with a lot of stress and strain and conflict and inconvenience. So talk to me about those things. I just kind of like, bleh,
but it comes back to your why, right? Knowing you, I mean, I do a lot of things but I don't feel stressed very often. And that's because I've curated a lifestyle that really works for me and fills my soul. And it's easy for me to stay up late sometimes and write copy for the new website because I'm excited about it. And it really connects to my heart and soul. But that's because I know and I'm clear on what my why and my purpose is, right? And so I think that's another piece that docs need, all practitioners need to look at. But the value piece is a big one. And a lot of people, my experience with teaching people or encouraging them to investigate what their values actually are in their business, in your personal life, as a parent, because they can be different. It's a game changer. And it's also been a really challenging process for some people, more so than they thought. They think they're going to just sit down with their list of, oh, this is my values. And they realize, well, no, actually, there's 100 of them here. Which are the 5 ones that mean the most to you? And when you can really distill that down into that process, it really it simplifies your life. One of my top values is health. So it filters everything that I do. You know, what I put into my body, am I going to move every day? How much rest am I going to get? Who am I going to spend time with? It just filters everything, you know, the kind of people that I want to associate with. It's just part of the decision-making every single day. And also another, like a simple way, we're going to go to a restaurant for dinner and it's fast food. Like, I'm going to say no. Just easy for me. Cause I'm like, thank you. I'll meet you after. Right. Sure. Like, it's a way to, you know, someone said to me years ago, like knowing your values, they're like the doorman, right? The doorkeeper to like parts of your life. And it's completely true. So I think, as you said, like defining success, and it is personal, it is malleable. There's things that I'm doing now that I would never have been able to do 10 years ago because my kids were younger and I wanted to be present for them. And I want to do that again, depending on my definition of what a good mother means is me, not to necessarily what someone else is going to mean to them. So I think clarity around your why and really knowing your values can make things a lot simpler.
And is that the clarity process in a nutshell? Because I know that one of the things that you start with in your coaching program is, okay, let's get clear, number one, on what you're building and why you're building it. And that literally is step one for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit more of an involved process, but there is probably the number one, if you go to the website, you know, drmelissalongo.com, the number one free resource we have that it ever gets downloaded is called Creating Your Own Rockstar Doctor Life. Because my show is called Rockstar Doctor Life. And it takes people through the 3-step basic process. It's a hefty workbook. It's 15 to 20 pages, but it's a great starting point. You know, it's completely free. So if this would help, you know, your listeners, go grab it. But yeah, the clarity process is definitely starting with, well, who are you? And let's be real, you don't find out who you are over after one workshop or one conversation or one book that you read, but it's an ongoing process. You can go to retreats, you can work with therapists, coaches, mentors, your partners, your family. Like, it's a constant, evolution of asking yourself, well, who am I? Who am I now? How am I evolving?
Yep.
Do things that matter to you now matter the same way they did before?
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily an easy thing, but it's a powerful thing to get started with, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Let's merge into branding. And you said something about 15 minutes ago that made me think that, at least in your mind, things like having a compelling why, understanding your values, your priorities, and your branding and your messaging are linked together. Right.
100%.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know this about me, but my undergraduate degree before I became a chiropractor was in business and marketing. And I worked for a couple of advertising agencies in downtown Toronto before I moved to the States.
Nice.
So my background is marketing and advertising. And so I understand branding. It doesn't mean I'm good at it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I understand it. And one of the things that's really struck me about you, not just in say video conference calls like this, but seeing the things that you post on social media, looking at your website, there is a consistent look and feel that is, I would imagine, the brand of Melissa, Dr. Longo. And so I have a couple of questions about that, and some relate to just branding as a concept and where that fits into the process of creating the business and the life that somebody wants. But I also understand that, like, I'm not naturally gifted in that area at all.
Yeah.
And it's probably most evident when I come out of the bedroom dressed and my wife goes, go back and change. Those don't go together. Yeah. But you seem to have this natural style that to me is quite evident. So where does, let's start at the big picture and let's just talk about branding, and let's talk about the importance of that, because I think so many people miss that, and they just think, oh, well, all I have to do is like download a WordPress template for my website or go to Canva and at random pick some template for a social media post, something like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's a big deal, but how big a deal is it? Yeah. And how much effort does it take someone who's not naturally gifted in that area, which I think you are, and you can correct me on that.
I think it's one of those things where, you have eyes and skills, and some people love fashion and style and design and aesthetics, and some people don't. So there's lots of people that are willing to support you and can help guide people through the process if it's not something that they're into. But I think it's also important to understand, like, branding is not just one thing. So, you have training, let's say in product branding, business branding, like my practice brand is not Melissa's brand. Like, personal branding is still a little bit of a newer concept, right? I mean, so for me, I have my personal brand, but then as the practice brand, there was the podcast brand. There's different elements that all have their own kind of story to them. Right. However, as you said, and I appreciate the feedback, it is all cohesive. It should all fit together. And a lot of practitioners we go to school to learn what we love to do clinically. Yes. Just like you're not trained in how to manage people in HR, maybe on finances and how to manage things, how to market. Like, a lot of docs have never been taught this stuff unless you have a personal interest in it. So working with someone that can pull it together is really helpful, because it absolutely is more than just picking up a Canva logo and going with it. And the reason I've loved doing some of the branding work, and it does start with clarity, like what you said initially there, you absolutely, with every event that I do, every coaching project, it always asks people, like, well, who are you? What are we doing here? Like, because the more I know as a coach, the more I can help them. But it starts with clarity. And what I love about doing branding with docs is that when we can connect who they actually are with a design, with an element, with features that really connect with them and represent them, and let's say it shows up in how their website is designed, they own it differently. Like, they show up differently with a sense of pride. And then we even take it a step further, say, okay, well, if this is who you are, like, how are you presenting yourself? Like, what's your sense of style and like your whole vibe? Like, are you being someone that are you dressing in a way that makes you feel good every day? Or are you putting on something because someone told you to wear, that outfit to work? Like, And I did that for years too.
Yeah.
So I think that's heartwarming to me when I see people light up, when they see that they're just showing up as more authentically themselves. And authenticity is a bit of a overused word, I think, but it is the essence of it all, right? You can 100% be who you are in your business, in your relationships, in just day to day. Like, I'm the same person. I don't swear, obviously, in my practice. I'm kept it pretty clean here today, but a lot of the energy that I bring and who I am is how I show up in every situation. And that makes my life, again, simpler. I'm not going to try to put on a persona, in one environment versus another. And it makes it simpler too, because you attract the right people to work with you. Mm-hmm. And also, even at like speaking engagements and stuff, like, people are going to ask me to come because they already know who I am and what my vibe is like. And so it streamlines the whole process, and I think adds so much more joy to people's life. The fastest way to an unhappy life, I often say, is not being yourself. It's trying to be someone else.
Yeah.
So,
would you ever, and along that line, would you ever coach somebody to choose a branding approach? I don't know how to phrase this. Let me back up.
All right.
I've always kind of raised an eyebrow if I'm browsing the internet and I see like the Institute for fill in the blank, or the person's last name, like Dr. Brown Institute or something like that. Mm-hmm. And you go onto the website and you realize it's just one person with 2 or 3 staff people. And it's not an institute, but that's how they're presenting themselves to the world. Mm-hmm. And so there's like a big disconnect, because the word institute means something to me. I would imagine most other people would think at least along similar lines. And, to me, a single practitioner, I would never call myself an institute, right? I have a small practice, but so what's the importance of
authenticity?
Yes, thank you. I was struggling for the word, like just not being someone or something that you're not, and how you present that out to the world.
Yeah. And, this is a really interesting conversation, and I'm going to have more of this conversation actually later this afternoon, because there was a gentleman, he teaches at U of T, and he's a well-established entrepreneur, 20 years older than me. And he says to me all the time, he's like, I just love, like, you're always just 100% yourself. And I said to him the other day, I go, well, what's the alternative? Like, I don't know how to be anyone except me.
Well, it's exhausting to put up that mask all the time, right?
Yeah. And then he said to me, he's like, I did that in one of my marriages. He goes, this person was always kind of like wanting me to be someone that I wasn't. And we had shared some similar experiences with that situation. But I said to him, I said, am I that different? And he's like, yeah. He goes, so many people are not themselves that I see in the business world. So many people. And he teaches that again across the world at different colleges and universities. And so if I have any more insight, I'll let you know after our conversation today.
Yeah,
but people can see through people can see fakeness, right? And how many times, and this is probably the facade of social media, you see someone's photo of them and their wife and everything looks great. Well, probably things are not great, and especially if they're telling you if it's great. If they're always telling you, hey, this person is the best thing ever, like, are you telling the person that, or are you just telling the world that to make yourself feel better? Yeah. I don't know. There's lots of different stories we could probably share, but no one wants to see a fake. And that even comes down to branding photos. I mean, so many docs use photos from 10 years ago, and then someone comes in their practice and they're like, oh, you're not really who I thought you were. And what does that sniff out? Like, how current are you on everything else?
Yeah.
And so they don't realize that might be a detriment to how they're showing up, but it goes deep. The whole branding conversation could go quite deep, but it's amazing when you get it right. And then you're consistent with it.
Would you say that the importance of branding has magnified in the era of social media?
Probably. Yeah, I think yes, because there's influencers and, you get approached to do things based on your brand. And I think also from a cohesive, it's one more piece of the puzzle as far as aesthetics, right? So now it used to be that you just had your sign and your logo, and then, maybe your office decor kind of fit or your posters fit. Well, now it's that also extended outwards onto, the intranet. So is your website cohesive with what your logo is and what your internal office looks like? And, obviously if you're wearing any swag or any team stuff, your email campaigns should have the same branding. Your social media accounts for your practice should have the same branding too. It's probably the biggest mistake I see people make is they're not consistent. They use too many different things, too many different fonts, too many different colors, and it's hard on the eyes, but it also doesn't connect a brand to the consumer who's trying to place their trust in you. So that's social media is just one piece of it now, but it's still important for sure.
Yeah, there's so many different avenues where you can become visible. It seems to me that it's that much more important. I mean, branding, I think from a business standpoint, always has been important, but you can be seen in so many different places and circumstances. So branding, go ahead, please.
That's not just like, so I'd be curious your experience, being in advertising and branding and marketing. It's a very different thing if you're trying to market a product versus a person.
Yeah.
Right. And what people have to remember is like, you are your brand, right? So if you're talking to people about health and you're not actually showing up healthy, then there's a disconnect there, right? And so people are wanting to build like and trust and authority with their potential patients, right? And that's what the consumers are looking for as well. They want to trust you and like you before they place you as their provider. So I think there's a different feel. It's a little different than just wanting to make this, this pen sell because it's the best pen in the world. We're trying to build a different kind of connection and trust with people.
And is that ultimately the goal? It's not just having a website or a logo that looks nice or choosing a font that reads easily, that ultimately it's a communication of you and your personal style and your authenticity. I mean, to me, I mean, you can Google branding or brand kits and you'll get all these ideas about, having consistent color themes and a color palette and make sure everything matches and choosing different fonts and making sure, like you said, can't have too many fonts. Does branding stop there, or is there something that supersedes it? Like the concept of who you are, your values, what you stand for. And if that's true, then is it a matter of your branding is really just a reflection of that as you project that out into the community?
I think it's more of the latter there. Like it is like, so when I think about fonts, and fonts absolutely matter. And there's so many of them, right? But it depends on what you want the font to represent. I never use fonts that are like the Times New Roman kind of family, right? Like anything that's kind of really traditional and really capped, like the typewriter. I use them sometimes on Instagram because I think they're fun, but none of my other presents will ever have that because that doesn't connect with me. I like simplicity. I like clean lines from a design perspective, but also I'm not traditional. So you need to think I use script things, but I don't want to just use super flowery scripted fonts because my audience are not just women. Right? I want men to connect as well. And so there's different, is it going to be an edgy handwriting or is it going to be one thing that's super flowery and flowy? Again, it depends on who your audience is, which is probably another great conversation is docs and practitioners spend some time thinking about who's your ideal client. And we talk about this in the coaching world all the time with online coaching and business branding and stuff like that. But in your practices, give it some thought to who do you actually want to work with? If you want to work with kids, then is your office set up to reflect that? Are you using fonts that parents are going to connect with for their kids? Yeah. So if you just want to work with women, then use something that's really floral and feminine. Yeah. But if you want to work with everyone, you've got to make sure that you're communicating and messaging and marketing in a way that is going to connect with the people that you want to work with too, not deter them.
On the drive from where I am to the gym where I'm working out, there's a pediatric group, and I can't remember the name of the pediatric group, but on the side of the building, the name of their group is spelled out in block. It looks like play blocks, right, with the letters on it that kids play with. And I thought that was pretty smart. That was good branding and good design right there. So it's like I said earlier, to me, it seems that this stuff comes easy to you. I'm sure you've learned a lot more than what you were, let's say, your natural bent gave you. What does someone like me do who has no real apparent sense of style and doesn't know how to translate that into my business? Or you use the term like you are your own brand. And in fact, there was a book, I can't remember the name of the author, it was Be Your Own Brand, came out probably 10 or 15 years ago. And it was talking about a lot of these different concepts, like where, and obviously you have a coaching program, you have a process that you bring people through. And I would imagine that you try to connect with them to find out who they are, who is their authentic self, and then you build your brand from that, rather than saying, here's a brand, let me impose it on you. Like, buy this brand, for example.
Yeah, I don't think that's authentic. I think it's a self-discovery. One of the testimonials from one of the live events I did recently was really great. And because she goes, I started my business and I focused more on self-promotion than self-discovery. And I realized I needed to do some self-discovery first. So how do you get good? I mean, this is why you work with people. I mean, so there is definitely a bit of but the investment can be small. It doesn't have to be hiring someone to do all your logos and stuff. It can be just, spending a couple $100s for a call with someone and getting some clarity around that. But hiring people, if you're not good at it, is, accepting that. There's lots of free resources out there too. Some people are naturally better at it than others. How I came into it, I always appreciate that I was detail oriented and I like aesthetics, from a home decor and personal style standpoint. But it was actually Ed. So I met you because I worked as a coach in Ed Osborne's program. And he was the one, that, when you have other people around you, other coaches and friends and mentors, they pull things out of you. They'll see some of your gifts. So it may just be even asking around people in your personal life or business life, like, what do you think I'm good at? Or people may start saying to you, this person is really good at this. Maybe you should hire this. So he had said to me, you have a really good eye for this. I think you should teach this. And so it was a little bit of a push that I really couldn't say no to, because I was subcontracted to do the work. So, sometimes you're trusting the other people around you to see things that maybe you're missing. And I love it. And I definitely like, again, building the bridge between how you show up and the marketing and the story writing and copywriting and social media, all that fun stuff, podcasting, with who you actually are. I like making that connect for people. Yeah. It's not an easy it's not a one quick fix process. It's an ongoing evolution. You shared the story there about the kids' practice you see. Well, I think about my dentist who, he's in a practice for 20 years now too. And his first practice logo was Dr. Miller Family Dentist. And it was in a blocky logo because at that point in time, he was the only pediatric dentist in town. Well, now I've watched his logo change 3 times. Now he's doing a lot more restorative care. He's doing whitening. He's doing TMJ stuff. He's not just focusing on pediatrics. And so his branding has completely changed. Right. And I think it's worth noting that it's okay to evolve. You should be evolving with your clinical skills, with your interests, with your stage of life that you're in. It doesn't just stop. It's ongoing.
And that, that's a whole different conversation. Maybe we can have you back to talk about that, like the metamorphosis through practice, because I'm sure that you have, it's clear just through conversation that you've gone through evolutions and change, sometimes by necessity, sometimes by design. One of the things that really struck me, and this kind of goes back and touches on my story about how I got on the path to where I am now, it was never really out of, I had a vision and an idea of what I wanted to do. In many ways, I'm where I am now because of this winding, meandering path and the sum total of all the choices that ended up in a place where, like, I'm pretty dang happy with where I am right now. Yeah. But I had an interaction, my very first functional medicine patient, because I was in transition between the group practice and opening my single practice. I met this lady at Starbucks because I didn't have an office and she was desperate. And she bought me coffee. We talked for an hour. And at the end, she said, how much do I owe you? And I said the first number that came into my head. She pulled out her purse, wrote me a check, and handed it to me. And as soon as it touched my fingers, I had this epiphany of, my gosh, my practice can be anything I want it to be. Right. And that for me was that for me was the beginning of this intermittent process of self-discovery. I know I love this conversation because it's gone this way and that way, but it keeps coming back to some central and core tenets about having the life and the lifestyle that you want. And it's not always about being the busiest, billing the most money. It's about that deep soul satisfaction so that at the end of the day, you feel good about who you are and how you're serving in all the different capacities of your life, whether it's as a practitioner, as a spouse or a significant other, a brother, a sister, a friend, a parent, right? And we all play so many different roles. I love the idea of molding and massaging your practice intentionally to serve all of those different things, rather than just putting your practice and success in kind of that predetermined, this is just what we do way, and having all those things just kind of default to whatever you can manage because you're so committed to chasing this dream and this vision of what success looks like for whatever your profession is. I think that's so powerful. And I think it is a shame that we don't teach that in school. I think it's a shame.
By experience, but absolutely, it can be anything that you want. And, you know, I love podcasting, as you know, and I loved it because I had so many interesting conversations, but I learned from every guest that I had. And I can definitely say that my opinion about all of this has been informed by all of those guests, because you keep hearing and seeing their experience and how they're defining success. And they touched all of my lives, all the guests that I had. So you keep learning and if you're not, I mean, Jason, Jason Richardson, a good friend of mine, he was also a coach in the program where I met you, like resolve to evolve. That's his thing. We don't set resolutions. We have to always be growing. And if you're not, then there's a problem there. You're staying stuck. Who wants to be stuck? I don't want to be stuck ever. I want to keep moving forward. And some years and some months are much more challenging and growth providing, we'll say, than others. But in the big picture of it, we're always moving forward in some way, if you can choose to look at it like that.
Yeah. I actually reached out to Jay, and he's going to be a guest we're just trying to find a time over the next couple of weeks that our schedules line up, because I want to talk to him about mindset, because that's a whole completely different conversation.
Yeah.
He's
one of my mindset coaches. So.
Oh, good. A couple of final things, as I know we're kind of rounding up on our time, but you said something a moment ago about sometimes coaches see things in you that you don't necessarily recognize in yourself. And I don't know if you remember this, but I was on a call with you and Jason, and you just somewhere along the way just kind of blurted out, why don't you start a podcast? I think you'd be really good at it. And I sat with that for the longest time.
I don't say that to everyone, just so you know.
Okay, thank you. And here I am now, just over a year later. I mean, I launched the Family Nation podcast, which is a healthcare consumer-facing podcast that I've done over the past year. And now this is the second podcast. And like you, I've learned everything, or I've learned a lot from the people that I've interviewed. But even just the process, I'll tell you, one of the most invaluable things that I've gotten out of the client-facing podcast is having an opportunity just to sit and talk. And it's amazing how your brain starts to sift through ideas, and you start to crystallize your message and what's really important to you from whatever perspective that you're speaking from. Did you go through that as well as you did your podcast, whether, that was the Rockstar Doctor Life? You have 2 podcasts, right? Is that correct?
I've had 4 over the years. I'm currently only producing one of them now, but I've had them in different sequences and different series. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So being forced, if you will, to sit down once or twice a week and talk to a microphone about a particular topic. It's been an amazing exercise in sifting and creativity for me.
It is absolutely that. I said to you, I don't tell everyone, because I think it's really important for people, and this is here as a marketing tip for docs. Like, you need to know what your jam is. You need to know what your skills are. Not everyone should do a podcast. Some of them are very boring, and we'll turn them off. Right? Some of them are not engaging. They're not conversational. Like, same with video. Some people are so nervous and they're not uncomfortable. And I will always tell people to get a little bit uncomfortable, because that's where you grow. However, if it's totally not your scene and you're not comfortable, then don't do it. There's lots of other ways to grow a practice that don't require a podcast or video.
Yeah.
So know your skills and know what's best for you, and then pursue that. But ongoing, it's a great dialogue to be having. I mean, I create content based on what I'm hearing, from my clients. And Rockstar Doctor Life was so much fun, because I was having conversation with other people living their own version of a Rockstar Doctor Life.
Right.
What I found where there was a gap was I was having so many conversations with people when I was coaching them that were so consistent, and I would be like, I bet you if all these people are having the same consistent thoughts from month to month, maybe this content can be helpful for other people as well. So then I started my show, Work, Play, Hustle, Heal, to have those shorter monologue type conversations, and also to add to my coaching practice, because I can tell my clients to go listen to them. Go listen to the show on, who your dream client is. Go listen to the show on why your message matters. And with the new season just launched, I'm adding in conversation with other people because I missed doing them. Yep. But it's an ongoing process, and sitting down to create 20 minutes of content or 10 minutes of content, have a conversation. It can be really awkward because you feel like you are kind of talking to yourself, but the more you do anything, the better you get. Right. And
That's true.
It helps you distill your own brand and your own clarity.
Yeah.
And there's lots we could talk about with podcasting.
I know
how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have one final question before I let you go. What does Melissa do in her off time?
We're currently in winter, which is not my favorite season. I love the sun. I love being outdoors. I love moving. I love my friends. I love connecting. So when I'm not in practice, you will often find me drinking good coffee or a really lovely glass of wine, or on my bike, and when the season permits, and spending time at the beach, just taking time to be with the people that matter to me, or having really great conversations, and with good food, and moving my body somehow, or creating. Yeah. I mean, when I'm not in my practice, I'm creating all the time. Right. So that's fun for me though.
Cool. Where can people find you?
Easiest place would be drmelissalongo.com. That's got all the links there for all the programs I have and the shows. I probably play around on Instagram more than Facebook these days. So Dr. Melissa Longo on Instagram, I share some things there too.
Awesome. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. That
was a great chat. I really enjoyed it. Good to see your face.
Me too. Yeah, we'll have to do it again.
Sounds good.